Ever notice how the worst moments of your life always happen at red lights? There I was. Thursday afternoon, 3rd Street and Morrison, stuck behind a Tesla so shiny it looked like it had never seen Portland rain. The light turned green. Nothing. I waited. Still nothing. So I did what any impatient Portlander does. I honked. The driver turned around. My husband turned around. Calvin. My Calvin. The man who'd kissed me goodbye that morning with "long day at the office, babe," turned around in a $100,000 car I'd never seen before. And next to him, a woman. Not just any woman. A very visibly, unmistakably pregnant woman with copper red hair and a hand resting on a belly that looked ready to pop. Our eyes locked through 2 car windows and approximately 9 years of marriage. His face went from annoyed to confused to absolutely terrified in about 2 seconds flat. It was like watching someone's soul leave their body in real time, except his soul was apparently living a whole separate life in the Pearl District. The pregnant woman looked at him, then at me, then back at him. You could see the gears turning. Badly. I'm Bethany Mitchell, by the way. 36, high school art teacher, professional overthinker, and, as of 3 minutes ago, the idiot who thought her marriage was solid just because her husband said, "I love you," every morning before his commute. Turns out his commute included a detour through an entire secret relationship. Who knew? Calvin Parker, 39, civil engineer, the man who once spent 45 minutes explaining the structural integrity of the St. John's Bridge during our 3rd date. The man who color-coded our shared calendar. The man who was currently having what I can only describe as a full-body panic attack in the middle of downtown traffic. He got out of the car. Actually got out. Like that was going to help. Bethany, save it. I put my Subaru in park right there in the middle of the street. Cars honked behind me. I didn't care. Who is she? The redhead. Bless her heart, she actually got out too. Looked between us like she'd walked into the wrong movie theater. Calvin? What's happening? Who is this? Who is this? I laughed. Actually laughed. Honey, I'm the wife. Been the wife for 9 years. 7 dating, 2 married, 1 apartment, 1 house, 1 joint checking account, and apparently 0 functioning brain cells because I never saw this coming. She went pale. Calvin went paler. Bethany, please, let me explain. He stepped closer. I stepped back. Explain what? That she's your Uber driver? Your sister? Your very pregnant coworker who you just happened to be driving around in a car I've never seen before? It's complicated. Complicated. The redhead cut him off, her voice rising. Complicated. Calvin, you said you were going to tell her today. You promised me you'd tell her about us, about the baby, about... She stopped, looked at me. Wait, you didn't know? He didn't tell you? And there it was. The moment when 2 women realize they've been played by the same man in completely different games. I looked at her belly, looked at Calvin, did the math. How long? Bethany. How? Long. The redhead answered. A year. We've been together a year. The baby's due in 6 weeks. She turned to Calvin, her face crumpling. You said you were getting divorced. You said she knew. You said, a year? I felt my voice crack. Pulled it back. I would not cry in the middle of 3rd Street like some Lifetime movie reject. You've been lying to me for a year? Traffic was backing up. Someone yelled at us to move. I ignored them. Calvin tried again. Beth, please, can we go somewhere and talk about this like adults? Like adults? I laughed again. Couldn't stop laughing. You're having a baby with another woman and you want to have an adult conversation? Sure. Here's an adult conversation. Get in your fancy car, take your pregnant girlfriend, and drive straight home. Our home. The one with both our names on the mortgage. You've got exactly 5 minutes head start before I get there. Beth, or... I pulled out my phone. I call your boss right now and ask him about the corporate credit card you've been using to pay for that Tesla. Because that's a company car, isn't it? Model S? Executive lease program? The one you said you couldn't get approved for? His face confirmed everything. The redhead gasped. Company card. You said you bought it. You said, 5 minutes, Calvin. Clock's ticking. I got back in my car, hands shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. I watched him in my rearview mirror, standing between his two cars, his two lives, looking like a man who'd just realized he'd been playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers, and losing. The drive home took 12 minutes. Felt like 12 hours. My brain was doing that thing where it replays every moment of your relationship looking for clues. The late nights, the conferences in Seattle, the new cologne, the way he'd stopped reaching for me in bed 6 months ago, the separate checking account he'd opened for business expenses. I'd been so stupid. So willfully, blissfully stupid. Our house in the Beaumont neighborhood looked exactly the same as when I'd left that morning. Craftsman style, blue paint, white trim, window boxes I'd planted with pansies last spring. Picture perfect. Magazine worthy. Built on lies. Calvin pulled up 2 minutes after me. Alone. "Where is she?" I asked as he walked up the driveway. I told her to go home. "Home to where? The apartment you're paying for? The one that comes out of our money?" He stopped walking. How did I know? "Calvin, I'm not an idiot. I just played one for the last year." I unlocked the door. "Get inside. We're going to have that adult conversation now. And you're going to tell me everything. Every single thing. Or I swear to God, I will burn your entire life to the ground." He followed me inside, and I could see it in his eyes. He was calculating, wondering how much I knew, how much I'd guessed, how much he could still spin. He had no idea I was about to become his worst nightmare. Because here's the thing about art teachers. We notice details. We see patterns. We understand composition. And right now, I was looking at the complete picture of my marriage for the first time. And I was about to deconstruct it, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but the truth. You know what's funny about confronting your cheating husband? The sheer audacity of watching him try to manage the narrative while sitting on your couch, the one you picked out together at IKEA on a Sunday afternoon 2 years ago. Calvin sat across from me in our living room, looking like a defendant at trial, which, essentially, he was. "Start talking," I said, pouring myself a glass of wine. Didn't offer him any. "And, Calvin, don't insult my intelligence more than you already have." He ran his hands through his hair. Classic Calvin stall tactic. "Her name is Sienna. We met at a company mixer last February." February. I did the math. "So you've been lying to me for 13 months, not 12. Great. Love the precision." "Beth, keep going." He shifted uncomfortably. "It just happened. We started talking. She was new to Portland, didn't know anyone. Oh, poor thing. Must have been so hard being young and alone in the big city. Good thing she found a married man to show her around." I took a sip of wine. "What is she, 25? 28. 28. Fantastic. 8 years younger than me, which in guy math makes her basically a different species." I leaned back. "So you met in February, started sleeping with her when? Do we have to—" "When, Calvin?" "March. Late March." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Late March? That's right after our anniversary weekend in Cannon Beach. The one where you told me I was the love of your life. The one where we talked about maybe starting a family." I set down my glass before I threw it. "Guess you decided to start one without me." His face flushed. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like? Paint me a picture. Use details. You're good at details, right? You managed to hide an entire relationship and a pregnancy for over a year. I never meant for this to happen. Nobody ever means for it to happen, Calvin. But somehow your pants ended up on her bedroom floor repeatedly for 13 months. Somehow you managed to coordinate schedules, rent an apartment, lease a Tesla, and knock her up. That's not accident. That's commitment. More commitment than you've shown our marriage in 2 years. He flinched. "Good. The apartment," I continued. "Pearl District. How much? $2,800 a month. $2,800. And you paid how?" Silence. "Calvin, we're going to play a fun game called I Already Know the Answer. How did you pay? Our savings account and some of the money your mom left you." The room went cold. "My mother's money? The inheritance she left me 6 months before she died? The money she saved her entire life working double shifts as a nurse? That money? I was going to pay it back. With what?" I stood up. Had to move. Had to do something with the rage building in my chest. You make $78,000 a year. You're paying $2,800 for her apartment. You leased a Tesla, and you think you were going to pay back $40,000. Were you planning to rob a bank or just continue stealing from me? It wasn't stealing. It's my money, Calvin. Money my dead mother left me, and you spent it on your pregnant girlfriend's rent. I paced. What else? What else did you spend our money on? He looked at the floor. Furniture for her place. Some clothes. Her doctor's appointments. The insurance company wouldn't cover her until… Stop! I held up my hand. You bought furniture? Played house? While I was here teaching teenagers about color theory and coming home to meal prep and asking about your day? You were always so busy with school. Don't you dare. I pointed at him. Don't you dare make this about me being busy. I was busy building a life. Our life. While you were apparently building a completely different one across town. The doorbell rang. We both froze. Expecting someone? I asked sweetly. Calvin's face went white. Beth, don't… I opened the door. Sienna stood there, mascara-streaked face, enormous belly, looking like a Pinterest board for pregnant and dramatic. Is he here? She demanded. He won't answer my calls. Oh, he's here. Come on in. Join the party. I stepped aside. She waddled in. And I know that sounds mean, but she literally waddled, and stopped when she saw Calvin. You left me at the intersection. I had to call an Uber. You can afford an Uber but not your own apartment? I asked conversationally. Interesting financial priorities. She turned to me, eyes blazing. This is your fault. If you'd just let him go. Let him go? I laughed. Honey, I didn't know I was supposed to be holding on. Last I checked, we were married. Which typically implies a certain level of commitment, but clearly I missed the memo about the open relationship policy. He doesn't love you anymore. Oh, is that what he told you? I looked at Calvin. Is that the story? Big bad wife doesn't understand you? Relationship dead for years? Let me guess. We haven't been intimate in months. We're basically roommates. You were planning to leave anyway? His silence was confirmation. Here's what actually happened in our marriage, Sienna. May I call you Sienna? We had dinner together every night this week. Sunday, he made his mom's pot roast recipe. Monday, we watched that cooking show you love, Calvin. Well, that I thought you loved. Tuesday, we talked about refinancing the house. Wednesday morning, he told me I looked beautiful. Yesterday, literally yesterday, he texted me, "Can't wait to come home to you," with a heart emoji. I pulled out my phone, showed her the message. Her face crumpled. So either my husband is an Oscar-worthy actor, I continued, or he's a lying, manipulative, selfish coward who wanted two lives and thought he was smart enough to maintain both. Which do you think it is? The baby is his. I don't doubt it. The baby is absolutely his. You know what else is his? This house, this mortgage, this legal marriage, and about $40,000 he owes me. $40,000! She turned to Calvin. You said you had savings. You said after the baby came, we'd get a house. With what money? I asked. He's been spending mine. Our joint account is down to $1,800. I checked this afternoon. His 401k has a loan against it. And that Tesla? Company lease that he's not supposed to use for personal driving. Which means every mile to your apartment is technically fraud. Sienna looked like I'd slapped her. You said, you promised. He promises a lot of things, I said. Question is, which promises is he actually keeping? She started crying. Ugly crying. The kind where your whole face gets blotchy. Calvin finally found his voice. Sienna, go home. Beth and I need to talk. Home? She spun on him. What home? The apartment you said was ours? The one you're apparently stealing money to pay for? It's complicated. Stop saying that, she screamed. Everyone keeps saying it's complicated. It's not complicated. You either love her or you love me. You either want this baby or you don't. Which is it? The silence stretched. Calvin looked between us like a man watching his life split into two bad options. Get out, I said quietly. Both of you. Beth, get out. Take your pregnant girlfriend, take your lies, and get out of my house. I walked to the door, opened it. You've got until Sunday to figure out where you're living. Because it's not here. Sienna left first, sobbing into her phone, calling someone for a ride. Calvin lingered. We need to talk about this. Sunday, Calvin. Lawyer's office. I'll text you the address. I looked at him. Really looked at him. You know what the saddest part is? I would have forgiven an affair. People make mistakes. But you built an entire alternate life. You stole from me. You lied every single day for over a year. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. And I will never forgive you for choosing her over basic human decency. He opened his mouth, closed it, left. I locked the door behind him, poured another glass of wine, and sat in the sudden silence of my house. Then I opened my laptop and started making a list. Time to see exactly how deep this hole went. Here's what they don't tell you about betrayal. It turns you into a detective. And I was about to get my honorary badge. Friday morning. Calvin hadn't come home. Good. I'd spent the entire night doing what any self-respecting woman would do. Going through every file, every document, every digital footprint of our marriage like I was preparing for the bar exam. By 3 a.m., I'd found the first crack in his story. By 5 a.m., I'd found the whole crumbling foundation. The company credit card he'd used for the Tesla? Not just the Tesla. Restaurants I'd never been to. Hotels in Seattle, San Francisco, even one weekend in Napa Valley, during a conference he'd told me about. The conference was real. The attendance was not. I found the actual attendee list online. Calvin Parker? Nowhere on it. But here's where it got interesting. I logged into our joint bank account, the one he thought I never checked because he handled the finances. Turned out Calvin had been transferring money to a second account, an account I didn't know existed. In small increments. 500 here, 800 there. Never enough to trigger my attention, but over 13 months? Almost $60,000. $60,000 missing from our marriage. I sat back, coffee cup shaking in my hands. This wasn't just an affair. This was premeditated financial infidelity. This was a man planning an exit strategy while kissing me goodnight. My phone buzzed. Text from my best friend, Marnie. Coffee? You sounded insane last night. I'd called her at midnight, rage-crying about Calvin. She'd listened to the whole story without interrupting once. A superpower only best friends possess. We met at our usual spot, Powell's Coffee on Hawthorne. Marnie took one look at me and ordered a double espresso. You look like you haven't slept, she said. I haven't. I've been busy becoming a forensic accountant. I showed her my phone, screenshots of every transaction. Every transfer, every lie documented in neat little rows. Her eyes widened. Beth, this is actually criminal. Oh, it gets better. I pulled out a folder. Yes, I'd printed documents. I'm an art teacher. We love folders. Remember how he said Sienna's apartment was $2,800 a month? The one he's paying for with your mom's money? That one. Guess what I found? I slid a document across the table. Lease agreement. Guess whose name is on it? Marnie read it. Her jaw dropped. Both of them? Calvin and Sienna? Joint lease. Which means he's not just paying her rent. They're legally co-tenants. Which means when I divorce him, that apartment is a marital asset used for adultery. I smiled. Actually smiled. In Oregon, that matters. You talked to a lawyer already? Called one at 6 a.m., emergency consultation. Turns out my high school friend Rachel is now a divorce attorney. Who knew? I sipped my coffee. She's reviewing everything this afternoon. But here's the best part. You ready? There's more? The Tesla. The fancy Model S he's been driving around? It's a corporate lease, which means he's supposed to keep mileage logs. Company policy. For taxes. I pulled out another document. I called his office, said I was with the accounting department doing an audit. Very friendly, very helpful. You didn't. I did. And guess what? His reported mileage doesn't match his actual mileage. Not even close. He's been logging trips to client sites that were actually trips to Sienna's apartment. That's fraud. Tax fraud. The kind that gets you fired and possibly investigated by the IRS. Marnie stared at me. Who are you, and what did you do with my friend who cried during Toy Story 3? That friend died Thursday at 2:47 p.m. at a red light on 3rd Street. This is her evil twin. I leaned forward. I'm not just divorcing him, Marnie. I'm dismantling him, legally, thoroughly, and with extreme prejudice. Remind me never to cross you. Too late. You already borrowed my favorite sweater and returned it with a stain. She laughed despite herself. So, what's the plan? I pulled out my phone, opened notes. I'd titled it, Operation Phoenix, because I was about to rise from these ashes, and Calvin was about to burn. Phase 1. Document everything. Already done. I've got bank statements, credit card bills, text messages I recovered from our shared iPad. Yes, he forgot to turn off syncing. And about 40 photos of him and Sienna from her Instagram that she posted before making it private. Her Instagram is public? Was. I screenshot everything before she locked it down, including the post from 6 months ago where she's wearing my grandmother's necklace, the one Calvin said he lost. Marnie gasped. He gave her your grandmother's necklace? Yep, that's theft. I have documentation proving it was mine. Rachel says I can file a police report. I scrolled down. Phase 2. Secure assets. I already transferred half of our joint account into my personal account this morning. Legal in Oregon during separation. Changed the locks on the house. Also legal since my name's on the deed too. You changed the locks? 7 a.m. Locksmith named Tony. Very efficient. Gave me a discount when I told him why. I continued. I also called our mortgage company, put a freeze on any refinancing attempts without my signature. Called our insurance company, removed him from my car insurance. Called our credit card company, reported his card as lost. It'll take him 3 weeks to get a new one. You're terrifying. I'm thorough. There's a difference. I took a breath. Phase 3. Let him implode. This is the fun part. I'm not going to chase him. I'm not going to beg. I'm going to let him sit in that apartment with Sienna and their upcoming baby and their complete lack of financial planning, and I'm going to watch reality hit him like a freight train. How long until the baby comes? 6 weeks. Maybe less. First babies can be early. I smiled grimly. Which means in 6 weeks he's going to be responsible for a newborn, a girlfriend who just realized he's broke, and a wife who's about to take him for everything he's worth. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. We need to talk. It's Sienna. I showed Marnie. Do not respond, she said immediately. Oh, I'm responding. I typed quickly. Calvin's attorney can contact my attorney. Otherwise, we have nothing to discuss. You don't have an attorney yet. She doesn't know that. And I will by Monday. I hit send. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Please. I'm pregnant and scared. He's not answering my calls. I don't know what to do. I felt a tiny pang of sympathy. Tiny. Then I remembered her waddling into my house calling this my fault. Not my problem. You made your choices. Live with them. I blocked the number. Marnie whistled low. Ice cold. She's 28. She slept with a married man. She knew he was married. I guarantee he wore his ring around the office. She doesn't get to play victim now that it's inconvenient. I finished my coffee. Besides, I have bigger things to worry about. Like what? Like the fact that I found an email from Calvin to his boss from 3 months ago requesting a transfer to the San Francisco office. Marnie's eyes went huge. San Francisco? San Francisco. He was planning to move. With Sienna, the baby. All of it. Just leave. Probably would have hit me with divorce papers after he was already gone. I pulled up the email on my phone. He wrote, and I quote, My wife and I have discussed relocating for better opportunities. Except we never discussed it, because there is no my wife and I in his plan. There's just him and her. That's sociopathic. That's Calvin. I stood up, gathering my folders. But here's what he didn't count on. I'm not some passive character in his story. I'm not going to make this easy. I'm not going to cry and beg and wonder what I did wrong. I know what I did wrong. I trusted him. And now I'm going to make him wish he'd just been honest. What's phase 4? I smiled. Actually smiled. For the first time since Thursday, it felt genuine. Phase 4 is where I win. And he loses everything. That afternoon, I met with Rachel at her office downtown. She reviewed everything I'd brought, and I'd brought everything. Bethany, she said after an hour of reading, this is one of the most documented cases of marital misconduct I've seen. You could teach a class. Art teacher skills. We're big on evidence and documentation. She laughed. With what you've got here, the financial infidelity, the misuse of marital assets, the tax fraud with the company car, you're not just getting a divorce, you're getting the house, full repayment of your inheritance, and probably alimony. I don't want alimony, I want justice. In divorce court, they're the same thing. She leaned forward. Here's my recommendation. File Monday. Fast and hard. Request immediate temporary orders freezing all assets. With the evidence you have, we'll get it. Then we sit back and let him panic. What about Sienna? What about her? She's not your problem. She's his. Rachel smiled. And when that baby comes and he realizes he can't afford diapers because you've frozen his accounts and he's paying back your inheritance, that's when the real show starts. I left her office feeling something I hadn't felt in 2 days. Powerful. Calvin thought he was so smart. Thought he'd managed everything perfectly. He had no idea I was 10 steps ahead. And the best part? I was just getting started. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I say it's best served with legal documentation and a smile. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, Rachel filed the divorce papers. By 9:30, Calvin had been served at his office. By 10, my phone was blowing up. I let it ring. I was in the middle of teaching a class on Renaissance art. Priorities. By lunch, I had 17 missed calls and one very long, very panicked voicemail. Beth, what the hell? You froze our accounts. I can't access anything. My cards aren't working. Call me back right now. I deleted it. Took a bite of my sandwich. Turkey and avocado from the deli down the street. Delicious. Marnie texted, "Did you do it?" Filed this morning. He's currently having a meltdown. I love this for you. So did I. The temporary orders hearing happened Wednesday, 5 days after I'd caught him. Calvin showed up looking like he'd aged a decade. No Tesla. Apparently the company had already repossessed it after I'd sent them an anonymous tip about the mileage fraud. He drove up in Sienna's beat-up Honda Civic. Poetic. Rachel was brilliant. She presented our case like she was prosecuting a criminal. Bank statements showing the missing $60,000, the forged signatures on the account transfers. Yes, forged. He'd signed my name twice. The lease agreement for Sienna's apartment using marital funds, and my personal favorite, the recovered text messages where he told Sienna he was handling the wife situation. The wife situation. That's what I'd become. A situation to be handled. The judge was not amused. Mr. Parker, Judge Morrison said, peering over her glasses, you've misappropriated marital funds, committed fraud on financial documents, and engaged in what appears to be systematic deception. Do you have anything to say? Calvin's lawyer, a guy who looked fresh out of law school and utterly overwhelmed, tried to argue that I'd known about the affair and was just being vindictive. Rachel shut that down immediately. Your Honor, my client discovered the affair 6 days ago when she literally ran into her husband and his pregnant mistress at a traffic light. She had zero knowledge before then. The evidence supports this. Judge Morrison granted everything we asked for. Temporary full ownership of the house, full access to all accounts, immediate repayment plan for the stolen inheritance, and, the kicker, spousal support during the divorce proceedings. Calvin would be paying me $2,000 a month until this was finalized. His face went gray. But, Your Honor, his lawyer stammered, my client has a baby on the way. Should have thought about that before committing fraud, Judge Morrison said dryly. Next case. We walked out of that courthouse and I felt 10 feet tall. That was beautiful, I told Rachel. That was easy. He gift-wrapped this case for us. She grinned. Wait until the IRS gets involved with those tax returns. You reported him? I'm obligated to report suspected fraud. It's the law. She winked. Funny how that works. The real fireworks started 3 weeks later. Sienna went into labor. Exactly 3 weeks early, right on schedule with what the doctors had been warning about high-stress pregnancies. I know because Calvin called me at 2 a.m., desperate. Beth, please, I need money. The hospital needs a deposit. Insurance isn't covering everything. I don't have... You have $2,000 you owe me this month. Use that. That's for rent. Sienna's landlord is threatening to evict us. Landlord? I thought you were on the lease? Silence. Then, she couldn't afford it after you ran out of my money to spend on her? I sat up in bed. Calvin, you made choices. Multiple choices. Over 13 months of choices. Now you get to live with them. I'm begging you. Remember when I begged you to be honest with me? When I asked you in February if everything was okay, and you said you were just stressed about work? When I asked in June if we were good, and you kissed me and said you'd never been happier? My voice went cold. I begged too. Difference is, I deserved answers. You deserve exactly what you're getting. I hung up. Marnie, who was sleeping over for moral support and wine, looked at me from the guest bed. Harsh. Necessary. I lay back down. He's got a corporate job and a college degree. He'll figure it out. I did. The baby came at 6 a.m. A girl. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. I know because Sienna's sister posted about it on Facebook, and I may have been doing some light social media stalking for research purposes. By noon, Sienna had posted a photo, her looking exhausted, Calvin looking terrified, and a tiny baby with a tuft of dark hair. The caption, "Welcome to the world, Melody Harper Parker." Daddy's little surprise. I stared at that photo for a long time, felt nothing. Maybe a little pity for the baby who didn't ask for any of this. But Calvin? I felt absolutely nothing. My phone buzzed. Text from Rachel. You sitting down? Calvin's company fired him. Effective immediately. I sat down. What? Tax fraud investigation. They suspended him pending review 2 weeks ago. Remember when they took the Tesla? Well, the review finished. They found irregularities dating back 18 months. He's done. I called her immediately. He's unemployed? As of this morning, which means he can't pay spousal support. Oh, he still has to. Court order. He'll just have to figure it out. She paused. Beth, this is falling apart faster than I expected. His lawyer called me today trying to negotiate a settlement. What kind of settlement? He'll give you the house, repay the inheritance over 5 years, and agree to the divorce if you waive spousal support going forward. I thought about it. Calvin, jobless, with a newborn, and a girlfriend who was probably realizing what she'd actually signed up for. Tell him I'll think about it, I said. Give me a week. I didn't need a week. I needed 3 days. 3 days to watch Calvin's life completely unravel on social media. Because, yes, Sienna was one of those people who posted everything. Day 1 post. Overwhelmed but blessed. Being a new mom is hard. Day 2 post. When you realize babies are expensive and your partner lost his job the day after she was born. Prayers needed. Day 3. Post. Just a photo of her crying with the caption, I can't do this. That's when Sienna's mother got involved. I know because she called me. Actually called me. Someone must have given her my number. Ms. Mitchell? This is Linda Vaughn, Sienna's mother. What can I do for you? I'm calling to apologize. For my daughter, for this whole mess. She sounded tired. I didn't know Calvin was married when they started dating. She told me he was separated, going through a divorce. I would never have encouraged. Mrs. Vaughn, I appreciate the call, but your daughter is an adult. She made her choices. I know she did. But that baby is innocent. And right now they're staying in my spare bedroom because they can't afford rent. And Calvin can't find work because of some investigation. And Sienna won't stop crying. Her voice cracked. I'm asking mother to mother. I'm not a mother. But you could have been. Should have been. And I'm sorry my daughter helped take that from you. She took a breath. I'm asking you, woman to woman, is there any way to end this? Some kind of settlement? Calvin's lawyer says you're owed money and we'll pay it. My husband and I will take a loan if we have to. Just, please, that baby needs stability. I closed my eyes, thought about Melody, tiny, innocent Melody who'd done nothing wrong, thought about Calvin, who'd done everything wrong. I'll settle, I said finally. But here are my terms. Full ownership of the house, immediately. Full repayment of the $60,000 he stole, $45,000 now, the rest over 2 years with interest, and he signs the divorce papers with no contest. Done. Thank you. I'm not finished. He also writes a letter. Not to me, to keep for Melody, explaining what he did, every detail, why he lied, how he stole, all of it. So when she's old enough, she knows the truth about how she came into this world. Silence. That seems cruel. That seems like accountability. He doesn't get to rewrite this story in 20 years and play the victim. Truth matters. Even uncomfortable truth. I softened slightly. Mrs. Vaughn, I don't blame Melody. I don't even really blame Sienna. Calvin lied to both of us. But he needs to own what he did. Completely. I'll make sure he does. Then we have a deal. The settlement was finalized 3 weeks later. I signed papers in Rachel's office while Calvin signed them at his new apartment. A studio in Gresham he shared with Sienna, her mother, and baby Melody. Cozy. The house was mine. The money was being repaid. Linda and her husband had taken out a home equity loan. The divorce would be final in 6 months. I walked out of that office into a Portland afternoon that smelled like rain and new beginnings. Marnie was waiting in her car. How do you feel? Free, I said, and I meant it. What now? Now? I smiled. Now I live my life, the one I should have been living all along. We drove to our favorite taco place, ordered too much food, and laughed about absolutely nothing important. And somewhere across town, Calvin was probably changing diapers and wondering how he'd gotten here. I didn't care anymore. That's how I knew I'd won. 6 months later, I was standing in my kitchen, drinking coffee and watching rain hit the windows, when the final divorce decree arrived in the mail. Official, legal, done. Bethany Mitchell, single woman, homeowner, survivor of the world's most predictable midlife crisis story. I should have felt something dramatic. Relief, maybe. Sadness. Anger. Instead, I felt calm. Like I'd been holding my breath for 9 years and finally remembered how to exhale. The house looked different now. I'd repainted the living room, that sage green Calvin hated. Bought new furniture, stuff I actually liked, not the investment pieces he'd insisted on. The bedroom had art on the walls now, my students' work, framed and displayed like the gallery it deserved to be. Turns out when you're not funding someone else's secret life, you can afford nice things. My phone buzzed. Marnie. Divorce final? As of 9 a.m. this morning. How do you feel? Like I just got paroled for a crime I didn't commit. She laughed. Drinks tonight? We're celebrating. Can't. Parent-teacher conferences until 7. Tomorrow then. No excuses. I smiled. Deal. The money situation sorted itself out better than expected. Linda and her husband paid back $45,000 immediately, and the remaining $15,000 came in monthly installments. Calvin picked up work as a contractor. Civil engineering firms wouldn't touch him after the fraud investigation, but construction companies were less picky. He made enough to cover child support for Melody and his share of the repayment. Barely. I'd heard through mutual friends, through Facebook stalking, that he and Sienna had split up 4 months after Melody was born. Turns out shared trauma and a screaming infant don't actually build a foundation for lasting love. Shocking. Sienna moved back in with her parents permanently. Calvin got an apartment in Beaverton with 2 roommates. They co-parented on a schedule organized by Linda, because neither of them could be trusted to coordinate anything without adult supervision. And me? I got my life back. Better than back. Forward. I started dating again in month 4. Nothing serious. A few coffee dates, one awkward dinner with a guy who spent the entire time talking about his CrossFit routine, one actually pleasant evening with a librarian named Marcus who made me laugh. It felt strange. Good strange. Like learning to use muscles I'd forgotten I had. Marcus and I went out 3 times before he asked, "So what's your story?" "Everyone our age has one," I told him. The abbreviated version. Traffic light, pregnant girlfriend, divorce, the works. He whistled low. "That's intense. How are you so normal about it?" "Normal?" I laughed. I spent 2 months crying in my car between classes. I burned every photo of him I could find. I may have egged his apartment once. Hypothetically, can't prove anything. Hypothetically. But eventually you realize staying angry is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It just makes you sick. I shrugged. He lost everything that mattered. I kept everything that did. That's victory enough. Most people aren't that evolved. Most people didn't have a best friend who physically removed wine bottles from their hands and forced them into therapy. I smiled. Growth isn't optional when Marnie's involved. We didn't work out, Marcus and me. Different life goals. But we're still friends, which feels like progress. Being able to end something healthy without burning it all down. Turns out not everything has to end in disaster. Who knew? I ran into Calvin once, completely by accident. Target on a Saturday morning, because of course it was Target. He looked tired, older. He was buying diapers and baby formula, pushing a cart with one wobbly wheel. Saw me in the checkout line. We made eye contact. He looked away first. Good. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. What was there to say? Hope fatherhood's treating you well? Karma's a wonderful thing? Thanks for stealing my inheritance and teaching me that trust issues are actually just pattern recognition. I paid for my stuff, paint supplies and a new set of brushes, and left. In the parking lot, I realized I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just nothing. That's when I knew I was really done. My students asked me once why I didn't have photos of a husband or kids on my desk like other teachers. Because my life's not in pictures, I told them. It's in right now. This conversation, this moment, you guys. One girl, sharp kid, reminded me of myself at 16, said, "That's either really deep or really sad. Can't it be both?" I smiled. Best things usually are. The final payment came in last month. $15,000 transferred into my account with no fanfare. No note, just numbers on a screen representing the end of a chapter I never wanted to write. I donated half to a women's shelter, kept the rest. Seemed fair. Marnie asked what I was going to do with the money. Maybe a trip, I said. Italy? I've always wanted to see Florence. Study the art in person instead of from textbooks. Alone? Why not? I do everything else alone now. That's not sad. No, I said honestly. It's freeing. Nobody to accommodate, nobody to check with, nobody to lie to me about where they're really going. She hugged me, tight. Look at you, all healed and cynical. I prefer experienced and realistic. Tomato, tomato. So here's what I learned from the great Calvin Parker disaster of my mid-30s. People lie. Sometimes the people you trust most lie the best. That's not a reflection of you. That's data about them. Money matters. Specifically, your money. Keep your inheritance separate. Check those bank statements. Knowledge is power, and ignorance is just expensive. Betrayal doesn't break you unless you let it. It bends you, reshapes you, forces you to rebuild with better materials, stronger foundation, higher standards. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just living well, moving forward, being genuinely happy while they're stuck dealing with consequences. Calvin lost his job, his marriage to me, his relationship with Sienna, and any chance of retirement before 70. I lost a liar, gained a house, and remembered what it feels like to like myself. Math says I won. Last week I painted something new for my classroom. Abstract piece, lots of blues and golds. Chaotic, but intentional. Beautiful in its messiness. A student asked what it represented. Phoenix rising, I said. Rebirth after destruction. Did you go through something destructive? She asked. I smiled. Thought about a red light on 3rd Street. A honk. 2 lives colliding and splitting. Everything that came after. Yeah, I said. But I got through it. And so will you. Whatever your it is. She nodded. Seemed to understand. Kids always do. They're more resilient than adults give them credit for. Maybe we all are. The divorce decree is in a folder now. Filed away. I don't look at it. Don't need to. I know what it says. I'm free. And honestly, that's the only status update that matters. Funny how 1 honk can end a marriage, 3 months can end a career, and 6 months can end a chapter you thought was your whole book. Turns out it was just the prologue. The real story? That starts now, and I'm writing it myself this time.
I unexpectedly came home at noon without telling my husband in advance, and I unexpectedly saw, through the half-closed bedroom door, my husband with Winter, his close friend, on our love seat. I stood frozen when I heard my husband say, between heavy breaths, "I'd rather kiss the dog Daisy than kiss Melissa." Just before I quietly walked away, they noticed, and their faces turned pale. My name is Melissa Ward, 34 years old, a veterinarian and owner of Pine Hill Veterinary Care Clinic in Cambridge, Boston. My life used to revolve around abandoned cats, injured dogs, and the quiet cries of little souls in need of healing. I always thought of myself as lucky. I had a job I loved, a steady husband, and a warm home in Brookline. Until that afternoon, I left work early due to an unusual stomach pain. My stomach twisted, my head a bit dizzy, but all I could think about was getting home, lying down, and maybe having a simple lunch. As I drove closer to home, I furrowed my brows slightly. Franklin's SUV, my husband's, was already parked in the garage. Strange. At this hour, he was usually at the office until at least 3 in the afternoon. But the suspicion passed quickly, replaced by a small joy, the thought of having lunch with him. I smiled, my heart lightened, as if something warm was waiting for me ahead. I opened the door and stepped inside, softly calling his name. No response. In the silence, there was only the ticking of the wall clock and the lingering scent of an unfamiliar perfume in the air. I stepped carefully down the hallway and stopped. A sound. Soft. Broken. The sound of breathing and muffled giggles. My hand trembled as it touched the half-closed bedroom door. And then, everything inside me collapsed. Franklin, my husband, was with Winter, his best friend, on the love seat in our bedroom. Winter, who once brought in a cat with pneumonia to my clinic, whom I had once considered a friend, was there, on the same seat where my husband and I used to share sweet evenings together. I froze. I couldn't scream. I couldn't cry. I could only hear Franklin's voice, low and breathy. "I'd rather kiss the dog Daisy than kiss Melissa." Daisy, the dog I rescued from a garbage dump when she was close to death. That sentence pierced through me like a blade. 8 years of memories shattered like a glass thrown onto stone. I recalled the past few weeks, how he kept avoiding me, claiming to be tired, blaming work, even sleeping alone in the study. Now, everything made sense. As I stepped back, my foot accidentally hit the corner of the wooden table. The sound made Franklin turn. Our eyes met. He froze. His face turned pale, his mouth opening as if to say something, but I couldn't hear anything anymore. I turned away and walked out before he could stop me. I rushed down the stairs, opened the door, and drove off, though my hands were shaking so hard I could barely control the steering wheel. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away as far as possible. The Boston wind was so cold it stung my eyes, but I still didn't cry. I forced the tears back, as if letting them fall would make me crumble completely. My phone rang incessantly. I looked at the screen. Franklin calling, then Winter. I didn't answer, but they left voicemails. Franklin's voice pleading, "Melissa, please let me explain. You misunderstood. It wasn't as serious as it looked. I was just too drunk. A big client canceled the contract today, and I had too much to drink." Winter was just comforting me. Then came Winter's voice, choked and broken. "Melissa, please listen. I never meant to betray you. I was only there because Franklin was upset. I didn't know things would go that far. It's not love, just a moment of weakness." I turned on the speaker, listening in silence. Their voices echoed between the howling wind outside the car and the distant horns of Boston traffic. Every word they said sounded like a bad play, full of lies and fear. They wanted me to believe that betrayal was just an accident, an unserious one. I didn't respond. I just gripped the steering wheel tighter, and finally, the tears came, mixing with the rain that had begun to tap on the car windows. I drove to the park by the Charles River, where we had once celebrated our 3rd wedding anniversary. I sat on the cold stone bench, stared at the misty water, and realized I had lost not just a husband, but also the most beautiful part of my trust. An elderly woman walked by with a white-haired dog, paused, and looked at me with gentle eyes. "Are you all right?" she asked. I nodded faintly. She smiled. "Don't cry for someone who doesn't value your love." That sentence felt like a touch to my heart. I nodded again, a faint smile forming, but inside, a decision had already been made. That night, I rented a small hotel room in Back Bay. The room looked out onto Beacon Street, the yellow lights reflecting off the windows. I sat there, silent for hours, staring at my own reflection, tired, in pain, but no longer wanting to run. I opened my notebook and wrote the first lines. Day 1, reclaiming control. And below that, a short list. Meet lawyer, hire private investigator, collect evidence, protect assets, protect myself. As I put the pen down, I knew my life had just taken a completely different turn, and this time, I would be the one rewriting the whole story. 3 days after I left home, I was still staying at the small hotel in Back Bay. Every morning, I woke up early, opened the window to watch Boston's crowds heading to work, and felt like a ghost. No longer a wife, no longer a friend, just a name adrift in chaos. Franklin still called. Every day. His messages overflowed with apologies, promises, and hollow lines like, "I can't live without you." I read them and felt nothing. Winter had vanished completely from social media, but I knew that kind of silence. It wasn't shame, it was calculation. And I needed truth, not guilt. That morning, I received a strange text from Nathan Collins, Winter's husband. Just one line. "I think we should talk. I have something you need to know." That one sentence made my heart sink. Nathan, the quiet, gentle man who always accompanied Winter to couple events. I still remembered his eyes during last year's Christmas dinner, eyes that knew something but chose silence. I called him back. His voice was low, tired. "Can we meet?" At Riverbean, Harvard Square. As soon as possible, the small cafe was tucked under a row of old brick walls, the scent of espresso mingling with the smell of baked cinnamon. I walked in and saw Nathan seated in the far corner. He looked thinner, the shadows under his eyes deeper, and his coffee cold. As I sat down, he quietly said, "I'm sorry for everything." I hesitated. "You have nothing to be sorry for, Nathan. We're just standing at opposite ends of the same truth." He gave a tired smile. "No, I knew about them before you did." My grip tightened. "What do you mean?" He pulled out an old phone and showed me a folder full of messages, conversations between Winter and Franklin going back nearly 6 months. This wasn't a fleeting mistake. It was deliberate, sustained, filled with coded language, rendezvous, and planning. He said, "They deceived us both." But that's not the worst part. I discovered a plan, one that chilled me. He opened a tablet, displaying screenshots of emails from Winter to Franklin. One line stood out. "If she loses credibility, we can buy the clinic. Call Dallas. He knows how to handle the small accident with the VIP client's cat." I read it and felt frozen. Small accident. They were talking about a living being, an innocent creature. I looked at Nathan. He nodded grimly. They were planning to orchestrate the death of a cat belonging to a high-profile client, then spread rumors your clinic was negligent. When your reputation collapsed, Franklin would come in as the rescuer and buy the practice at a low price. Winter would manage the PR. Do you understand? This isn't just betrayal. It's a plan to destroy you. I sat frozen, gripping my coffee cup until my fingers turned white. Faces of the animals I'd saved flashed through my mind, the sleepless nights. The thank you letters hung on the clinic walls. All of it, to them, just a business deal. Nathan looked at me and said slowly, "I didn't come to hurt you. I came because I can't stay silent anymore. Franklin and Winter think they're clever. that you'll collapse and I'll stay weak. But they forgot that the silent ones are the ones watching. I looked at him, my emotions tangled. Anger, sorrow, and a flicker of hope. For the first time in days, I didn't feel alone. I nodded. If you're ready to help, we can turn this around. I don't just want to expose them, I want the truth out. Nathan took a deep breath. I've prepared everything. I have copies of their messages and their financial plan to take the clinic. He handed me a USB drive. When it touched my palm, it felt like holding a fuse. Small, silent, but powerful enough to blow apart every lie. I set down my cup and looked out the window. Rain fell softly on the brick street. I said, my voice calm and cold, I won't let them decide my worth. Thank you, Nathan. From now on, we're no longer just victims. He gave a tired but real smile. Then let's begin. As I stepped out of the cafe, the wind hit hard against my cheek, bitterly cold. But I had found an ally, and stepped into a battle I knew I would win, not through fury, but with precision. Since the meeting at Riverbean, Nathan and I stayed in regular contact. We used encrypted emails and secure apps to share documents. Nathan continued living with Winter, pretending to forgive her, while secretly recording calls and copying emails and texts between her and Franklin. He told me, she thinks I'm weak. But the more I play the fool, the clearer I see who they really are. I knew he was enduring pain, but we both understood. Silence was a strategy, not surrender. On Monday morning, I decided to meet Lucia Harrington, a lawyer recommended by an old friend. Her office was on the 22nd floor of a glass tower on Boylston Street, overlooking Boston. Lucia came out to greet me, around 45, slender build, silver-streaked hair tied back, her eyes calm but sharp as blades. When I sat down, she placed a black coffee in front of me and said softly, "Ready to talk?" I told her everything. The affair, Nathan's messages, the plan to destroy the clinic's reputation. Lucia didn't interrupt. She simply took notes, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she clasped her hands together and said firmly, "The first thing you need to do is draw your legal lines. I'll help you draft a post-nuptial agreement to protect all your assets and the full ownership of Pine Hill Veterinary Care. If Franklin wants to reconcile, he'll sign. If not, you still win," I sighed. "He won't sign if he knows the real reason." Lucia smiled faintly. "He'll sign. Men like Franklin only trust what they believe they control. You just need to give him that illusion." Then she looked me in the eye. "Melissa, when a man cheats, he's not just taking your trust. He's testing whether you'll fight back. And if you don't, he'll believe you deserved it." I sat in silence. Her words struck deep, not because they hurt, but because they were true. I'd trusted too much, been too gentle. Now I had to use the same intellect I used to heal others, to save myself. Lucia opened another folder and pointed to documents I needed: financial statements, my veterinary license, lease agreements, and tax returns. "We'll move everything temporarily into a personal trust, under your name and an independent trustee. We'll use Massachusetts laws protecting personal businesses in marriage. Think of it as a strategic relocation." I nodded and started taking detailed notes. For the first time in weeks, I felt my breathing steady. No more chaos, no more being pushed into corners. I was writing the rules now. The meeting lasted over an hour. As I stood to leave, Lucia placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Melissa, you heal the voiceless. Now, learn to heal yourself, with reason, not sympathy." Stepping out of the building, the wind from the Charles River blew my hair back. I opened my phone and began recording all incoming calls from Franklin, saving every message to a separate drive and sending a backup to Lucia. I even installed a small recorder in the clinic, in case Winter or anyone tried to interfere. That evening, I opened my laptop and created a folder titled Recovery Plan. Inside were 3 new files: legal documents, evidence, Franklin and Winter, and next steps. I stuck a note on my screen. Control. Don't react. At that moment, I understood. To reclaim freedom, I didn't need to scream or retaliate in pain. I just had to let them fall into their own trap. And the first thing I needed was proof. I returned to Pine Hill Veterinary Care on Thursday morning, after nearly a week off, under the pretense of recovering my health. As the glass door swung open, the familiar mix of antiseptic and coffee from the front desk greeted me. Everything looked normal, but I knew, from now on, every corner of this place would be a battleground. Sienna, my assistant, rushed over, her eyes a mix of relief and worry. "Dr. Melissa, I'm so glad you're back. There's something I think you should know." I looked at the young woman, her hands tightly clutching a file. "Tell me, Sienna." She swallowed hard, lowering her voice. "2 days ago, Franklin came to the clinic. He said you were sick and had authorized him to collect a few client contract files. I thought it was odd. He's never gotten involved with the clinic before, but he was confident and he had a printed email with your signature." I remained silent. One word lit up in my mind: forgery. Sienna continued. "I secretly checked the security footage. Here." She opened her laptop and pulled up a video. On screen, Franklin in a long coat and sunglasses, heading straight for the back archive. He discreetly opened a cabinet, pulled out files, took photos with his phone, and quickly slipped them into his bag. As he exited, a woman in a gray coat, unfamiliar, was waiting in the parking lot. She received a small USB from his hand. I stared at the screen, my heart slowing, each beat icy cold. "He didn't just betray me, he's stealing our client's trust." Sienna nodded quietly. I backed up the footage to a separate drive, password protected. "If you want, I can send it to your lawyer." I took her hand and gave it a light squeeze. "Thank you, Sienna. Keep this between us. From now on, anyone asking about me, don't say a word." She nodded, her gaze more resolute. "I understand. I'm on your side that night." As Boston glowed under warm yellow lights, I sat in my small hotel room and replayed Franklin's video frame by frame. The hum of city traffic blended with the steady beat of my heart. No longer chaotic. I placed the USB into an envelope, sealed it, and sent it overnight to Lucia Harrington. With it, a short note. "They've started playing dirty." "I'm ready, around 10 p.m., Lucia called back, her voice as calm as ever. "Good, Melissa. Now you have visual evidence. But don't rush. You don't need to strike first. In law, timing outweighs evidence. Let them confess on their own. That's how you win, not just in court, but in yourself." I listened silently, eyes fixed on the window. The reflection of street lamps shimmered on the glass, revealing a woman staring back, no longer broken, no longer grieving. "Lucia," I said, "I'm not seeking revenge. I just want the truth to do its job." She replied, "And it will, when you're patient enough." I nodded, set the phone down, turned off the lights, and let the faint blue glow of the laptop screen fill the room. In the darkness, I heard the clock ticking, each beat soft yet firm, like the footsteps of justice drawing near. 2 days later, I received a message from Franklin. Just one conversation. "One chance, Melissa." I was wrong. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before typing back. "All right. Oakview, 7 p.m. Oakview, the restaurant where we celebrated our 4th anniversary." That night, he had given me a bouquet of white roses and whispered, "I love the peace in you." Now I chose that very place, to see how much of his so-called peace remained. That evening, Boston lay beneath a soft layer of mist. I wore a simple cream dress, hair neatly pinned, and the same small silver earrings I used to wear on clinic days. When I walked in, I saw Franklin already seated at our old corner table. He looked thinner, scruffy-bearded, shirt wrinkled, yet still forced a smile, as if that could erase everything. "Thank you for coming," he said hoarsely. I gave a small nod. You said you needed to explain. Franklin sighed, clenching his hands, eyes fixed on the table. I know you saw everything. I won't make excuses. That day, I drank too much. The past month's been hell. Major clients dropped out. My mind's been a mess. Winter came to comfort me, and things got out of hand. I remained silent. My composure clearly unsettled him. I know it was terrible. I regret it every day. We were just friends. I don't love her, Melissa. Not at all. I just felt weak, just wanted someone to listen, just that once. I was wrong, I tilted my head, my voice soft, as if speaking to an anxious patient. And you think a canceled contract gave you the right to destroy 8 years of trust? He lowered his head, voice cracking. I don't know what to say besides, I'm sorry. I just want a second chance. I'll do anything to prove I'm sorry. I paused for a long moment. Then, I pulled a white envelope from my bag and placed it before him. You said anything, right? Franklin looked at me and nodded eagerly. Yes. Anything to fix this marriage. I slid the envelope toward him. Then sign this. A post-nuptial agreement. Lucia, my lawyer, Jace, drafted it. If you truly want to start over, sign it. It's just a way to ensure you won't repeat your mistakes. He looked at me, suspicious. You hired a lawyer? I smiled faintly. You once told me, trust without terms is just fleeting emotion. I'm applying that now. Franklin opened the document, skimmed the first few lines. I knew he wouldn't read closely. That's who he was. Overconfident, dismissive, certain I'd always be soft. He grabbed the pen and signed. Done, he said with a sigh, then reached for my hand. I know you still love me, Melissa. I see it in your eyes. I let his hand rest for a moment, then gently pulled away. Everyone deserves a chance to make things right. He frowned, puzzled. I smiled, stood, collected the document, and slipped it back into my bag. Thanks for signing. Things will be much clearer from now on. I left him sitting there, surrounded by candlelight and the distant sound of a cello. As I stepped out into the sharp Boston wind, I stood on the sidewalk and took a deep breath. In my bag, the freshly signed post-nuptial agreement held a clause that stated any act of deceit, manipulation, or financial misconduct would trigger civil penalties and forfeiture of shared assets. Franklin had just signed his name into a perfect legal trap. And the cruelest irony? His own story of drunken weakness gave me every reason to set it. I turned and walked into the Boston night, a faint smile flickering across my lips. For the first time, I felt no need to retaliate, because I knew the truth stood with me, and he had just signed the beginning of his own downfall. The next morning, I received an envelope from Joseph Hale, the private investigator Lucia had recommended. Inside was a full report on Franklin's past, neatly organized, chilling, and full of fragments I had never known. The first page read, Elaine Ward versus Robert Ward, divorce file, Essex County, 1997. Franklin's father, Robert Ward, had cheated on his wife with a company employee. His mother, Elaine, divorced him when Franklin was 10. Since then, the boy had lived caught between love and resentment. He loathed his father's betrayal, yet grew up to become his mirror image. A brief note from his school psychology report read, emotionally unstable, strong possessive behavior, tendency to replicate paternal patterns. I read, my heart heavy. And then came the lines that left me frozen. At age 18, Franklin had a sexual relationship with Amy, his 16-year-old cousin, resulting in a pregnancy. Her family threatened legal action for statutory rape, but Franklin's mother, Elaine, secretly paid a large settlement, $50,000 at the time, in exchange for silence. 4 years later, during his senior year in college, Franklin had an affair with Michaela, a married professor. The relationship ended only after her husband found out, filed a complaint with the university, and forced Franklin to transfer schools to avoid disciplinary action. I sat still, feeling like I was reading a recycled script, one where every generation of warred men rewrote the same sin, just with new settings. Lucia called, her voice steady. Franklin despised his father, yet he's living out the same life. A child raised in betrayal either fears becoming the betrayer or becomes him, I replied softly, and Franklin chose the second. I closed the file and looked out the window. Morning light filtered through the Boston curtains, casting streaks like boundaries between past and present. Inside, I felt no more rage, only clarity. He hadn't accidentally betrayed me. He was repeating a legacy carved deep into his blood. I texted Lucia. I understand now. I want to know the origin of the other one. She replied, Winter? I think her husband is quietly digging into her past too. I set my phone down and inhaled deeply. A clear thought rose within me. To end this cycle, I couldn't merely punish them. I had to bring the truth to light, so the pattern of pain could stop with me. That afternoon, I met Nathan again at Riverbean. He brought a thin file, quietly saying, I think you should know, not for sympathy, but to understand why she chose that path. Inside were a few old photos of Sylvia Collins, Winter's mother, a nurse at a doctor's clinic who had been in an affair with a married physician for 3 years. When Sylvia became pregnant, the man disappeared, leaving her with an illegitimate child and not a word of remorse. Winter was raised in bitterness, with the only lesson her mother ever passed down. Men only stay with the woman who makes them feel special. I understood. She had learned to love wrongly from a woman who had once loved wrongly too. 2 entries in the file made my blood run cold. In her senior year of high school, Winter had an affair with Jackson, the father of her best friend. The relationship only ended when they were caught in a hotel, discovered by that very friend and her mother. Years later, during her internship, Winter again fell into an affair with Tristan, her married supervisor, which lasted 9 months before his wife found out, and he fired Winter in exchange for forgiveness. I read all this, and my heart sank. Not from hatred, but from the realization. Winter hadn't just ruined someone else's marriage. She was reliving her mother's tragedy, believing that she'd only be seen if she could possess a man who already belonged to someone else. Lucia once said, "Those who hurt others are often the ones who've never been healed." Now I understood. Winter didn't just want to steal my husband. She was trying to reclaim the image of a father she never had, and Franklin, sadly, was the perfect man for that role. I closed the file and told Nathan, "I'm not here to forgive. I just need to end this." He nodded. End the cycle that began with them. With truth. As I left the cafe, the rain had started to fall. Droplets clung to the glass window, like threads of memory, reminding me that healing always begins by looking straight into the root of the wound. That night, I returned to my hotel in Back Bay. The Boston rain still fell, mist-like drops blurring the windowpane with a soft haze. In the small room, lit only by a dim desk lamp, I sat down and opened my notebook. For the first time since everything began, I wrote, not to vent, but to see the story from outside my pain. I drew 2 parallel columns and wrote Franklin's name on the left, Winter's on the right. Beneath each, I jotted brief clinical notes like a psychiatrist annotating trauma. Franklin, feared becoming his father, repeated betrayal. Winter, longed to be seen by her father, pursued married men. I stared at those lines for a long time, as if facing 2 mirrored souls. A man who betrayed because he feared his past, and a woman who stole love to feel loved. Neither of them truly loved anyone. They were both running from childhood wounds, and in their flight, they used me like an obstacle to trample over in order to feel worthy. I closed my eyes and recalled what Lucia had said in our first meeting. Those who hurt others are often the ones who've never been healed. Back then, I thought it was just philosophical comfort. Now it echoed in me like a brutal truth. I had seen it, They were not monsters, only children who grew up in dark houses, now fumbling to relight a candle, even if it meant burning others. I turned to a new page and wrote in firm strokes, "I will not let their past define my present. I will end the cycle, with truth, not hatred." I closed the notebook and set the pen down. In the mirror's reflection, my face no longer looked lost. It held the stillness of someone who had finally seen through the illusions. Outside, the rain fell harder. I stood and drew back the curtains, gazing down at the streetlights. People still walked, cars still passed, life went on, and I understood. The world never pauses for anyone's pain. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel pain anymore. There was only one thing left to do: bring the truth into the light. 2 weeks later, I sent out invitations for the celebration of my 8th wedding anniversary with Franklin. The invitation was elegant, gold-edged white background, listing the venue. The Grand Ivy Hotel, Boston, 18th floor ballroom. No one knew that this event wasn't a celebration. It was a courtroom of truth I had built myself. Franklin protested violently when he saw the guest list. "Are you insane? Why would you invite Winter and Nathan? You want to turn our anniversary into a farce?" I only smiled and replied gently, "I just thought we should have everyone who's been part of our lives present. I want to start fresh, remember?" He hesitated, then nodded. He thought I had softened. He believed silence from a woman meant forgiveness. He didn't know I was silent because I was listening to the truth approaching. In the days of preparation, Lucia and Sienna came to the hotel to help. We rented a private meeting room next to the ballroom, where Lucia set up a small projection system and reviewed the USB, containing all the evidence. Franklin breaking into the file room, the messages detailing their plan to discredit the clinic, and the recorded conversation between me and Franklin at Oakview. Lucia placed a hand on my shoulder and said calmly, "When the truth is revealed, you don't need to shout. Let it speak for you, Sienna." The once shy assistant had become a pillar of strength. She helped organize the documents, arrange seating, and test every device. At one point, she looked at me, eyes tinged with concern. "Are you sure you're ready to see them in the same room?" I smiled, steady. "I've already seen the worst. Everything from now on is just truth." Meanwhile, Nathan continued his role as the forgiving husband. He messaged Winter, subtly feeding her the illusion that Franklin was leaving me for her. The conversations were archived by Lucia as proof of motive and conspiracy. Nathan told me over the phone, "She believes it now. She thinks Franklin will choose her, and this event is where he'll make it official." I replied quietly, "Let them reveal themselves. When people think they're about to win, they drop their masks." On the final night before the event, I sat in the hotel room, gazing out at the city lights. Boston shimmered, traffic flowing like a constellation of moving stars. I opened the USB again and replayed the videos, the evidence. Each frame was once a blade. But now, it didn't hurt anymore. It only reminded me how far I'd come. At 11 p.m., I closed the laptop and exhaled deeply. Tomorrow, it would all end. Not with tears, but with light. That evening, the Grand Ivy Ballroom glowed with white flowers, golden candles, and soft jazz music. Everyone was dressed to the nines, believing they were attending a wedding anniversary celebration, unaware they were about to witness a courtroom of truth. I entered wearing an ivory gown, long and elegant, its V neckline revealing the silver necklace Franklin had once given me on our first anniversary. The room fell silent as I walked through. Franklin stood near the podium, clinging to a forced smile. Winter, in a navy blue dress, sat in the back row, her eyes flickering between nervousness and confidence, as if she truly believed tonight Franklin would finally claim her. When the MC invited me on stage, I took the microphone and walked slowly under the lights. The music stopped. I raised my glass and spoke with a voice soft but unyielding. "Thank you all for being here. 8 years of marriage is long enough to understand. Some truths can't stay hidden under the spotlight forever." A few chuckled, mistaking it for a poetic opening. But seconds later, the screen behind me lit up. First, a video. Franklin entering the records room, handing off a USB to a stranger. Gasps rippled through the hall. Then the screen shifted to a series of messages. Winter. After the clinic collapses, we'll buy it. You'll be her savior, Franklin. Handle the media. I'll get her to sign. The air turned thick. Guests began inching away from Franklin's table. But I didn't stop. I clicked the remote, voice steady. And here's what they hid for far longer. Not just betrayal of a wife, but betrayal of basic human decency. The screen switched. Franklin Ward, 2008. Age 18. Relationship with underage cousin, resulting in pregnancy. Case settled privately. A stunned murmur swept the room. Then a photo from 2012, captioned, Affair with married professor. Transferred schools after complaint. Franklin's face drained of color. His grip on the wineglass turned his knuckles white. I said nothing, just looked at him. Then the slide changed again. Winter Collins, 2010. High school student, affair with best friend's father, caught in hotel. Another wave of whispers. Final slide. 2017 internship. 9-month affair with married director, ended when exposed. Wife filed for divorce. Now they understood. This wasn't a momentary lapse. It was a pattern, born of wounded psychology. Nathan stepped up calmly. I'm Winter's husband. I'm sorry, but this isn't just personal. This is a pattern of two people who were once betrayed, becoming betrayers themselves. He plugged in another USB, and the screen showed more messages. Winter. She's too soft to suspect. Just pretend a few more months, Franklin. I know how to get her to sign. The ballroom fell silent. Franklin looked down, hands shaking. Winter buried her face in her hands, tears streaking her makeup. Franklin tried to speak. Melissa, I was pulled in, I replied, voice composed, eyes cold but clear. You said you'd rather kiss a dog than kiss me. Well, I'd rather embrace freedom than hold on to a liar. A sharp crash. His glass shattered on the floor, scattering under the lights like shards of the love he once pretended to protect. Winter collapsed into her chair, sobbing. I just wanted to be loved. I looked at her, voice low, not bitter, just final. Step out of your mother's shadow, Winter. If you truly want love, stop stealing someone else's. At the back of the room, Lucia nodded. Everything had been recorded, legal, intact. I placed the mic down and stepped off the stage. Franklin called out, choking, Melissa, I can explain. I stopped, didn't turn. No need. The light already did. I walked out of the silent ballroom, each step echoing on marble floors. Every footfall a period ending 8 years of deception. The next morning, I woke up in my temporary apartment in Brookline to a phone vibrating nonstop. The news had spread across local media. A bold headline on the Boston Daily Chronicle read, Insurance agent Franklin Ward under investigation for alleged financial misconduct and conspiracy against Boston Vet Clinic. Within hours, his company issued a statement suspending him pending internal investigation. They cited potential conflicts of interest and ethical violations. I read it not with satisfaction, but with quiet closure, like a wound finally stitched shut. Winter's fate was different. The media descended on her like vultures. Leaked texts and videos of her entering the records room circulated online. She was dropped from 2 major PR contracts. One video showed her crying on Nathan's doorstep. But no one was listening anymore. The spotlight she had once craved now pinned her down with no escape. Lucia worked tirelessly for the next 48 hours. She filed a civil lawsuit with the Suffolk County Court, demanding compensation for reputational harm, emotional damage, and lost revenue at Pine Hill Veterinary Care. Every piece of evidence, USBS, videos, messages, was formally submitted. When I signed the case file, Lucia said, They can run from love, but not from the law. At the same time, something moved me far more. Mrs. Ellie, a 68-year-old client who once brought in her heartsick dog, Buddy, wrote an open letter to the Boston Herald. If Dr. Melissa had ever done wrong, I wouldn't still have Buddy beside me. She saved him and restored my faith in people. The letter spread faster than the scandal. Old clients returned, sending flowers and letters of support. Pine Hill's doors reopened after 2 weeks, its lights burning bright again. Every thank you card was a patch mending the trust that Franklin and Winter tried to tear apart. That afternoon, Franklin showed up outside my hotel. His shirt was wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes, clutching a bouquet of white roses. He stood in silence for a moment, then spoke with a trembling voice. "I've lost everything, Melissa. My job, my name, all of it. I know I deserve this. But please, forgive me. I don't want it to end like this." I looked at him for a long time. In that moment, I no longer saw the man who had hurt me, just a lost soul begging to be rescued. I answered, softly but firmly, "Franklin, I'm done healing anyone but myself." He froze, lips parting to say something more. But I quietly closed the door. No screams, no scenes, only silence. The silence of finality. The next day, I went to Lucha's office and signed the divorce papers. Ink seeped into the white page, slowly marking the end of 8 years together. When I finished, Lucia asked, "Any final words you'd like me to include?" I smiled. "No. I think he's heard enough." That afternoon, I returned to our old home. It was quiet, eerily tidy. I took down our wedding photo, packed it with a few keepsakes. When I locked the door, I didn't look back. Outside, autumn sunlight spilled gold across the sidewalk. I walked away, unburdened, like someone finally unchained. There was no triumphant victory, only the dignified stillness I had reclaimed after 8 long years of loss. 6 months had passed since that night at the Grand Ivy. Spring had come to Boston, and the trees lining Beacon Hill had begun to bud. I sat in the small office of Pine Hill Veterinary Care, watching sunlight stream through the windows, casting warm beams over the wall of photos, portraits of cats and dogs we'd saved. Life was strangely peaceful now, but beneath it, I knew the wheel of karma still turned, slowly and precisely. Franklin lost his job 3 months after the party. The internal investigation revealed he'd signed multiple invalid insurance contracts using client information for personal gain. The company issued a termination notice and demanded reimbursement for damages. Those who once called him a model man now avoided his gaze on the street. I heard he'd moved back in with his parents in Salem, hiding from the eyes of the world. A man who once believed he was above morality now had to bow before the very rules he used to dismiss. Winter, on the other hand, fell into a cycle she might never escape. She began dating a businessman in New York, 15 years her senior, married. The media speculated, then broke the story. He had betrayed her, too. Headlines called her the woman who always seeks love in the wrong place. I read it not with schadenfreude, but with sadness. Perhaps her wounds had never truly healed. And sometimes, you don't need to punish someone, because they've already done that to themselves. Nathan's path was different. He won the divorce case, gaining custody of his 6-year-old daughter, Amelie. One warm summer afternoon, he called me. His voice was calm and gentle. "Amelie's learning to draw. She said she wants to draw you, the woman who saved her dad from silence. Thank you, Melissa, for choosing truth over hate." I smiled, eyes stinging. "I didn't save you, Nathan. The truth saved both of us. As for me, I'm still here, in this small clinic nestled under tree-lined streets of Brookline. But Pine Hill Veterinary Care is no longer just a clinic. I've started a small weekend training program for vet students and volunteers called Ethics and Compassion in Veterinary Practice. I teach them not just how to save lives, but how to keep their hearts from growing numb in the face of ingratitude. I tell them, no one can truly hurt you if you're grateful for having seen their true face. After every class, I go to the backyard, where there stands a small statue of a Labrador named Max, the first animal I ever saved. Under it, I had inscribed, "Loyalty never betrays. Only humans forget." As I water the flowers around that statue, a quiet peace seeps in. I'm no longer the woman who was betrayed. I'm the woman who chose to walk away from the cycle of pain. Somewhere out there, Franklin and Winter are paying for what they did. But I don't think of them much anymore. I think of the morning light through my windows, the patter of small paws across the floors, and the relief of knowing this. I won, not through revenge, but through compassion and freedom. A year later, I sold part of my shares in Pine Hill Veterinary Care to found the Paw Hearts Foundation, a rescue fund for abandoned pets and underprivileged children who love animals. I wanted to spend the rest of my life healing, not just myself, but the fragile beings who needed a gentle hand. My first field mission took me to South America, to a small suburb of Venezuela. There, children lived in tin-roofed wooden homes, clutching skinny dogs like they were their whole world. I worked with a team of volunteers to set up a temporary animal shelter and teach the children how to care for their companions. One hot afternoon, while handing out disinfectants, I heard a faint sound from behind a pile of trash. A tiny, dust-covered kitten peeked out, trembling, with round gray eyes staring up at me. I picked it up, brushed off the grime, gently touched the wound on its paw. It nuzzled into my palm and let out a soft purr. I smiled, an abandoned soul, looking for something to believe in. In its eyes, I saw myself a year ago, wounded, cast aside, yet still believing in kindness. I named it Chance, for its second chance. That evening, during our volunteer team dinner, an American man named Michael Rivers, part of the medical group, handed me a small roadside bouquet. Nothing fancy, just wild daisies wrapped in brown paper. He smiled. "These were the first flowers to bloom after yesterday's storm. I thought you should have them." I accepted them with a quiet smile. Not a promise, not a beginning, just the peace of two strangers sharing a moment of light in a foreign land. One evening in Venezuela, as the electricity went out, I sat alone in a small wooden cabin, lit only by the flickering glow of a candle and the soft sound of rain falling on the tin roof outside. I opened the old wooden box I had brought from Boston. Inside was a letter I had written to myself on the very first night after leaving Franklin. The paper had yellowed, the folds worn and familiar, but the words remained sharp and unblurred. If someone says they'd rather kiss a dog than kiss you, thank them, because they just gave you your freedom. I read it again and smiled, not with the bitterness of past wounds, but with the quiet recognition of a woman who had come to understand. Freedom doesn't mean leaving someone, it means knowing when something no longer deserves a place in your life. I folded the letter gently and held it over the candle flame. The paper caught fire, its words curling, fading, dissolving into smoke that floated out through the open window. It wasn't an act of resentment, nor regret. It was simply a final farewell to the version of me that once stayed too long. When the flame went out, I looked up and saw Chance, the little gray kitten, curled peacefully at my feet, and I listened to the soft rhythm of the rain above. And in that quiet moment, I knew with absolute clarity, I had finally, truly healed. One early morning, I drove my old Jeep down a coastal road in Venezuela, the horizon glowing with the golden shimmer of sunrise spilling over the ocean. The wind tangled my hair as I drove, and beside me, Chance lay curled on the passenger seat, his soft eyes turned toward me in quiet trust. I turned on the radio, and a classic Fleetwood Mac song played, a melody that seemed made for those who had been broken, but had never let their hope die. In the calm, I spoke in voiceover, steady and serene. Betrayal didn't destroy me. It taught me who to trust, and when to let go. I pulled the Jeep to a stop by the beach, stepped out, and let my bare feet sink into the cool tide lapping at the shore. In front of me, the sun was descending into the sea. Not an ending, but a gentle, golden beginning of something freer. I lifted Chance into my arms, and he nestled into my chest, purring quietly into the sea breeze. That image, a woman holding a rescued soul under a setting sun, between the vast ocean and the open sky, became the final symbol of my journey. Kindness, unbroken by betrayal, still intact despite everything. The screen slowly darkened. The Paw Hearts Foundation logo appeared, followed by the words, "Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace over pain." The sound of waves continued in the background, merging with the soft closing melody, a gentle reminder that sometimes the most powerful revenge is to live with grace, to live with light, and to never let darkness reach your heart again. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it so that more women are reminded every pain can find its way to the light. Thank you for listening to Melissa's story, the woman who chose truth over hate and compassion over vengeance.